get the conversation started. So here we go. Hi, and welcome to the Working Differently in Extension podcast. I'm Bob Birch. Great to have you along for today's conversation. I'm excited about this conversation. It's really about something new, I think, in Extension, and a new space that could really affect youth development work in Extension. Our guests today are Lenah Nguyen. She works in Fauquier County with Virginia Cooperative Extension. Katie Thomas, who also works with Virginia Cooperative Extension in Loudoun County, and Paul Hill is here, and longtime viewers and listeners of the podcast know Paul from Utah State University Extension, Washington County. Paul is also an E-Extension Fellow studying the Maker movement, so I thought it was especially important to have him as part of this conversation. So welcome everybody to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about this Maker movement in 4-H, and Katie and Lenah, you've been involved in this through your 4-H Maker Fest. Lenah, can you tell us a little bit about the Maker Fest as an event?
Yeah, it was just a one-day thing that we did. It was about 6 hours, ran from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We had about 21 stations total, where kids could just kind of go to a station for a little while and then go visit another station, and each station had a hands-on activity where they could make something. So we had everything from smoothie wars, where they could add in a bunch of ingredients and make a smoothie of their choosing. We had art bots, where they could try to make a robot out of some pretty simple materials that could draw a picture. And then we had things like t-shirt jewelry. So it was everything from very traditional, like 4-H crafty activities to more STEM related activities. And Katie actually had an experience this past year too with a larger maker festival in the area.
Go ahead, Katie. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we kind of did a similar format. We had a little less activity stations. We had about 15. A lot of the same stuff. We did t-shirt jewelry, art bots. We did several stations with LED lights, squishy circuits, that sort of thing. And then we also had a lot of outside organizations come in and set up either to do a demonstration or to do, some of them had their own hands-on activity to show. And we also had a lot of groups through our land grant university, Virginia Tech. We had a lot of groups from there come out and help as well. They had a 3D printing lab. Their architecture design studio came out and showed some of the things they had built out of wood. Some of our experimental research stations came out and set up displays and gave out information on what they did. So this event was really huge. We expected 300 and we had 1,500. And our volunteers were definitely overwhelmed, but it was still a great experience for the public that came out that day.
Well, Paul, I think we started to get a little bit of a feel about what is involved in this maker education, but since you're working on this, specifically with your fellowship, can you give people an idea of what are we talking about when we're talking about the maker movement?
Well, that's a question that I got a lot this weekend. I was at the Barnes & Noble Mini Maker Fair, and Barnes & Noble announced that they were going to have a Maker Fair in every single, I think it was 650 locations across the United States, and so that was the biggest maker weekend there's probably ever been. And so what the maker movement is all about is creating things with your hands, solving problems. It started off in the Bay Area. If you're familiar with Make Magazine, it's kind of this hobbyist magazine about how to make things and kind of getting back to that DIY culture. And so with that, kind of the make community, the maker media, decided to get people together through maker fairs, and then I think kind of like what they just both explained with Makerfest, how they weren't expecting a lot of people, but then all of a sudden all these people came out of the woodwork, and that's kind of what happened with the Maker Fairs. And it's been going on for about 10 years in San Mateo, California, but then it's also people have started their own little mini Maker Fairs to really promote the Maker movement in their communities. And so what it looks like is people who have not necessarily selling products, but if you think back to the way that fairs used to be in extension, is people who used to make things and share, and that's really what the maker movement is all about. Is something that you've created, whether it's an IoT garden or for instance, myself, I like to make things with LEDs and lights, or drones, like my drone right here, and what it is, it's about creating and then sharing and using open source tools and hardware that's, a lot of it's rather inexpensive and just collaborative. And so really where the maker movement took off is people wanted to, with the internet, a lot of people wanted to start sharing, and I think it's a natural thing to create and then want to share it. And so moving beyond just these fairs, people have started sharing online and creating social networks where they can share not just what they made, but how it can be made, and then replicating that. And so that's really where it's taken off from. And you've got, I think we had several 100,000, 300,000 at the Maker Faire in the Bay Area, and then the New York Maker Faire, which is like the World Maker Faire, was the largest it's ever been this year.
Katie, did you get a sense, you said you had, 5 times the number of people that you expected. Did you get a sense of why people were there, or have any conversations about what really drew people to the event?
No, with that many people, it was a lot of running around and buying more supplies and damage control, that sort of thing. I think I don't have any evidence to back it up, but I feel like it was probably because, number one, it was a free festival, and number two, we did a lot of advertising, and we kind of highlighted that it was a maker festival, and we also included that there were STEM activities as well, because I think maker is still kind of catching on to everybody, so some people don't quite get what it is if they see the word maker, but if they see that there's science stuff involved for their kids, then that will draw them in.
Lenah, why did you decide to get involved in the Maker Fest? I'm sure you have a lot of programs, 4-H programs, possibly other programs that you're busy with. Why was this one that you wanted to take the time with?
Well, I first learned about it because our STEM extension specialist for 4-H, she had a training for us, and they created these kits so that we could start doing some maker activities in our own counties. I saw that, it was a good tie-in with everything that we're already doing in 4-H, from cooking projects to craft projects to woodworking. So I actually had just transferred from a more urban county where we did a lot of STEM stuff because we didn't have families with the acreage to have traditional livestock programs, and then I had recently transferred to a more rural county. So I really, was interested in continuing with traditional programming in this county, but also incorporating some more STEM into what they were already doing. So I thought Maker would be a good way to do that and kind of open people's eyes to, that what they're already doing is very STEM based, and Maker just provides a platform to talk about how what we're doing is related to life skills and creativity and team building, things that we're always trying to reinforce to our club leaders.
Paul, I'm interested in your reaction about that, because as I'm hearing Lenah talk, it really seems like Maker is a way to really tie STEM more directly to sort of those traditional 4-H programs. Am I off base, or what?
Oh, you're 100% right, and that's the thing, is Maker is cool, and STEM hasn't been for a while, and it's kind of, that's why we have this STEM education, this skills gap crisis, that we, there's at least in my community and nationwide, you have tech companies who need engineers, who need programmers, and we don't have enough. We're not producing enough in this country, and so I see the maker movement as a solution to STEM education. This skills gap, this crisis that we have, it's fun. It makes learning fun, and then when you apply all of the essential elements, and then the 4-H club structure, and this do, reflect, apply, this learning model, and this caring adults, it just enriches the maker movement. And that's where I really feel, and I've written quite a bit about this, is that 4-H is what the maker movement needs right now, and 4-H and the maker movement is what 4-H needs right now. And so if we can join the maker movement and then lift it up and really take a leadership role in the maker movement, we can make the movement better. We can make 4-H more relevant in talking, and being involved in the maker movement, which is critical right now. It's really gaining steam, and people are realizing that, hey, this is STEM education. This is what we're doing here, rather than we're just making something and sharing it. But when we reflect and we apply the things that we learn, and we go on to solve greater problems, I mean, it's all about the vessel and the project and the process, or the process, not so much the project. In the maker movement, 4-H, we don't really care if you're raising a lamb or if you're building a robot. And so it's those life skills. And so I've seen kids. I've been in 4-H now for about 4 years as a county agent, and I've seen kids who started out just tinkering a little bit, but really, because of the model that we use in 4-H to really guide them, they've learned so much, and they've mastered so much in robotics. They're starting off in their college career, studying engineering and being very, very advanced at it, and getting job offers, before they even get to college. And so really, I think we can have this symbiotic relationship if we work together. The maker movement's all about creating and sharing, but if we infuse all those essential elements that 4-H provides, and then the caring adults, and really the do, reflect, apply, also inquiry-based learning, you can make the whole experience much more enriching.
Katie, Paul talked a little bit about 4-H needing the maker movement needing 4-H, and so that leads us to this question of partnerships. You mentioned some of the people who were involved in the MakerFest event. How important have those partnerships been to moving this forward in your county and in Virginia, and how have you gone about developing those?
I think partnerships are a huge thing, very beneficial for any program, and especially this one. For both festivals that I've done, we couldn't have achieved them without our partnerships. So we pulled in, like I said, from our land-grant university, Virginia Tech, and luckily we have a campus in our area, so that was a huge help. And there are also lots of nonprofit maker groups out there that are also trying to get kind of a foothold and trying to get their name out in the public not just for their group, but to spread maker as well. So they came in and they helped out. They gave us volunteers, they brought activities, and that was a huge help. So it's definitely important to get partnerships like that, looking for other nonprofit educational groups. I know that we have a couple of children's science museums in the area. Those have come in as well. There are lots of local high schools that have robotics teams, and that is kind of part of the maker movement. They build these robots themselves, and they do all of the programming and the electricity and all that technical stuff that's involved. They do that themselves. So it's not something, I think maker really is such a community thing that can bring lots of different programs together, and it's really important to not take advantage, but to work with other groups, because obviously together you can do much more than you can just by yourself in your own little silo.
Lenah, how did partnerships work for you, and how did you go about forging those?
I mean, Katie already mentioned a lot of the partnerships that we relied on for that first festival. I've also just done some workshops related to Maker, and like I mentioned, I'm in a more rural community now, so it's always interesting to me to include people that are working in agriculture but are makers. We, for example, have this guy who does crops with drones. It's a business he made on by himself, and he's local, so he's a great resource to rely on. I'm like in the process right now of grading project books and portfolios, and I always read in at least 3 kids' portfolios that they really want to be farmers, but they know they can't make a living doing it. So I always like to make sure that I open kids' eyes to other careers in agriculture where they can make a living. So guys like the drone guy who does the scouting, I like to partner with folks like that and just open kids' eyes to ways that they could like get involved with the maker movement in agriculture.
I think I would also add, I mean, you do have to do, sometimes you have to do research on your own to find these other groups out there, and you're not just going to Google maker groups. You have to kind of think about what's included in maker, and like Lenah said, like agricultural groups. We also have a drone guy in our county as well, and even though he's trying to get his business started up, so we haven't been able to get connected with any of our maker festivals or programs, but that relationship is still there. So it's about doing research on the different types of subgroups that are included in Maker as a whole, and reaching out to them and keeping that going, even if they can't contribute to your festival or your program at the moment. It's good to keep that link there for future developments.
Lenah, do you know what nationally 4-H is doing in this space, or Katie, or Paul, I guess, for that matter? Is there national leadership in incorporating Maker into 4-H?
Well, I know that they are having a Maker Summit at the National 4-H Council in Chevy Chase, Maryland. I think that maybe just passed or was sometime this month. We actually had one of the women who was responsible for putting that first one together at our Maker Festival 2 years ago now. And she basically just led a couple hands-on activities for us. I think they were just starting at that point, so I don't really know what goes on at the Maker Summit right now.
The Maker Summit was actually, it finishes up today, I believe. I've got 2 people from my county, and there are probably about another dozen or so from Utah that attended. And from what I understand, there was the Barnes & Noble Maker Chat that was last week, and it was just to kind of hype up the mini maker fairs that were going on this weekend. And it was interesting because the CEO of Barnes & Noble was on there, and so was Dale Doherty, who is the CEO of Maker Media. And Dale was answering questions, and I asked him, 4-H has been making for over 100 years. How can we better work with the maker movement? And it was interesting because I found out from Dale that he used to work in 4-H, and his kids are involved in 4-H. And then the CEO of Barnes & Noble said that he grew up raising steers on a farm in upstate New York, and that 4-H was the best education he had ever had. And so it was fascinating to me to see their support for 4-H. And then Dale pointed out or mentioned that he had employees from Maker Media that were attending the 4-H Maker Summit, as well as some people from Maker Ed. And I think, those are getting those, and then the 4-Hers getting those people all in the same room. I'm really excited to find out what came of it and where we're going to take action next. And so I think the partnership with Barnes & Noble is a great thing because it brings more, many counties already have a Barnes & Noble. Unfortunately, not all the rural, but I have one, and a lot of local, programs in Utah do. And so I think that's a step in the right direction, and I'm excited to see kind of where it goes from here. When I was in the Bay Area Maker Fair this last May, California 4-H they had a booth, and they were doing all sorts of really cool maker activities with LEDs and soldering. And so I think we're headed in the right direction, and I'm glad that National 4-H Council is recognizing that and putting on the Maker Summit.
I think, Paul, you mentioned you referred to the Maker Week. Well, if it's called a movement, first of all, it has some cultural implications. If you're going to call something a movement, right? And so some of those might be this idea of DIY and how that relates to consumerism, and the idea of tinkering, and how that might relate to intellectual property rights, copyright. We had a story a few months ago about people breaking the law by working on their tractors, kinds of things. For anybody, Katie, Lenah, Paul, have those discussions arisen at all? Have they? Has anybody voiced concern over those? Is this something that only my crazy mind jumps to right away?
Not with 4-H, my 4-H clientele, but definitely with a lot of the makers in my community. There's this push for to really create drones and things that are for agriculture purposes, and then Internet of Things devices and all that for use on the farm, and looking at ways to innovate and automate farming. And but that's been brought up. Hey, I can't work on my tractor, or else I'm gonna break some copyright laws and get in some trouble with that. So that's been a concern for a lot of sort of ag producers I've talked to.
We do have a question from a live viewer, and I want to thank Doug Clement for this question. And he's really interested in the festival itself. So Lenah and Katie, with the technology, Doug's asking about in the facility requirements for the technology in the Maker movement. Whereas facility an issue, can you do this under a tent? Do you need internet access? What were the facility concerns in your Maker Fest?
I think it all depends on how much you want to do. I mean, theoretically, you could do it under a tent. There are just certain activities that you'd have to cut out. There are plenty that don't need electricity or internet access. Like ArtBot we mentioned earlier. You just need a table for ArtBot. But other activities do need electricity and internet, like the LED light up and paint activity, where you paint across a computer. You need kind of a webcam and a internet and a laptop for that. The makey activity that requires a computer and the makey kit to plug into the computer to play the piano or whatever you're trying to do with that. So there, you can definitely take it up, and you can use electricity and all that, but you could keep it scaled down if you wanted to, and just do a lot of old-fashioned stuff that don't incorporate a whole lot of technology. Like I said, the ArtBot just uses wireless motors, so you just get to duct tape those and see how that goes. We actually used our local fairgrounds. We have a two-story building, and I'm not good at estimating space and all that, but it was 2 stories was enough for us to set up about 1 or 2 tables per our 20 activity stations, and then we had 2 that were set up outside. It was early fall, so the weather was still nice, and that's a place that we're able to use for free, so we were fortunate we didn't have to pay a rental fee for that. This year, we like I said, we partnered with Virginia Tech, and because they have a campus that's close to us, we were able to use that building as well with no extra cost. So, and that actually took us up one step further than our local fairgrounds, because they actually had a 3D printing studio in the building, and they had computer labs, and they had plenty of classrooms and lots of little spaces to bring in all these outside exhibitors. So it really depends on how complicated you want to get started.
Did you have costs, Katie, that needed to be recovered, and if so, how did you go about that cost recovery? You said the festival was free, so.
Well, our first year we actually charged about $5 or $6. I think we did $5 advance per kid, and if you were chaperoning those children, you were free, and then $7 at the door. So that helped us, and we had a programming grant from our state 4-H foundation for $1,000. So, like I said, we didn't have a facility fee, but obviously, with so many hands-on activity stations, that requires a lot of materials. So that's what we used the money to go towards, was materials for the stations. A few of them were make and take activities. So, for example, t-shirt jewelry, they would cut up old t-shirts and make bracelets and hair accessories and bags and all sorts of whatever they could dream up out of t-shirts, and they took it home. We did heatless lava lamps, which, recycled water bottles don't cost anything, but the other stuff costs money, and they could take those home. This year, since we were connected with Virginia Tech, Virginia Tech decided they didn't want to charge a fee. They wanted it to be free. So partnering with them, they had their own budget that they could put money towards it. I know in 4-H we don't just say, oh, I've got all this money lying around, so don't worry, I'll pay for it. So we have to usually charge a small fee or find grant money. But we were fortunate to have Virginia Tech, and they pulled in a few small sponsors this year, like Northrop Grumman and some local restaurants to help pay for food for volunteers. So that helped recover some cost as well.
Lenah, what advice would you have for an agent who would be interested in starting or holding some kind of maker festival or maker event in their county?
I think, the partnerships are key. If there's someone else that's already doing it, like the next Maker Festival that I plan on having is going to be in partnership with a library that already wanted to do it and has some funds to put towards that kind of event. So, that's a good, easy way to get started. The things like the Barnes & Noble's Mini Maker Fair, if you can just show up and do one activity, that's obviously a lot easier than creating your own program from scratch. But, with partnerships, you sometimes get a little bit different focus than we would like to have in 4-H. We really want to have a strong focus on the reflection piece at all of our stations when it's a 4-H Maker Festival, whereas you might lose that if you are partnering with another organization that just doesn't value that as much as we do. So, I guess it depends on, what you want to get out of it. But if you just want to get started, it might be good to partner with someone else that's already doing something.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely, don't try to do something by yourself or on your own. Lenah and I worked together, and we had about 4 or 5 other 4-H agents from our district that stepped in to help with planning and running the activity stations. So that's pretty much a key component to getting started. And I would also say to start small. We had about 100 participants our first year, and about 30 volunteers, and that was just enough volunteers to cover that many participants. So again, that's where the partnerships come in, is getting those volunteers, and that's really the glue that holds it all together. Like I said, this year we were a little overwhelmed with 1,500 people, and I think we had about 50 volunteers for the day, so our volunteers were a little overwhelmed, and you want your volunteers to have a good experience and to come back the next year. So definitely start small. If you are a 4-H agent, advertise it to your 4-H communities, and don't do a big push for getting everybody from your locality to come in, because you really just want to make sure that you have the right amount of volunteers to run everything so that everybody has a good experience.
Doug Clement, who's joining us live, has made a suggestion too, and asked a question and a suggestion involved in there, and it's about is there a way to share this information across the system so we can learn from each other about planning and marketing and evaluation, what needs improving. Paul, are you aware of any space for extension where we're talking about maker movement?
Yes. That's what I'm working on, actually, is connecting all of us who are interested in the maker movement and need resources. So if you are interested in that, go to people.extension.org and join the maker community. That way you're automatically put into a Google group. We share. If you go to the extension edtechs.org, so extedtechs.org /makers, I've created a website where I'm curating a lot of content. And like, for instance, this will be up on there. There will be other videos and hangouts on there that I've been doing, as well as just like the Makerspace playbook that was put together by Maker Ed and Maker Media, and all sorts of things that we're curating and sharing back and forth. And so whenever I find something that's useful, I put it up there and then share it with the community. So definitely want to join that if you're interested in getting more involved and knowing about all this stuff, because it's kind of it takes a lot of learning, a lot of things to do yourself. And so I feel like instead of everyone creating these little wheels, if we work out loud and share, we can create one big wheel and go a lot farther than we could on our own and working on our own silos. So.
Well, thanks, Paul. And you mentioned the E-Extension EdTech Learning Network website. So maybe you can share with us what's coming up with the Learning Network. I know there's tweet-ups coming up this month. What's new in the EdTech Learning Network?
Oh, okay. I was hoping you'd ask that. So we just had a pretty cool little experiment we just did. So we did a live tweet up, and the topic was infographics, about how to create them, how we're using them, why we should make them, and things like that. And so that was a pretty large discussion. We had about 20 people join up. But at the same time, I did a webinar where we determined that there was a lot of people who wanted to be a part of these tweet-ups, these live tweet-ups, but they weren't really active on Twitter, and they felt more comfortable joining via webinar. And so I did a lurker webinar, and I had about 27 people join it, and we just talked about how a tweet-up works, and I kind of gave my play-by-play commentary of the tweet-up, and it was rather successful. So we had close to about 40 people from all different states joining in, trying to learn more about infographics, but really just the benefit there was about how we collaborate and how we share and how we work out loud and engage in a tweet up. And so something that I want to do with, if I can build up the community large enough, we can do a tweet up where we all get online and start sharing resources. So right now, if you go to EdTechs, EdTechs.org, you can get the Storyfy recap of the tweet up. And then if you go to learn.extension.org, you can go and see the recorded webinar, which is up now. And so definitely check that out. We've got another tweet up coming up later this month, and then we'll also probably do another lurker webinar at the same time. But yeah, check out the some other news with the extension. Check out the new about.extension.org site. There's some great blog posts up about kind of the changing strategies, and then the I3 issue core. And I believe they had about over 300 applications for the issue core, and we're just actually on the EdTech LN, our website, we actually have a series on making and tinkering in extension, written by Stephen Worker out of California, who I presented with at NAE 4HA in Portland just a few weeks ago. And so he's going to be doing a post each Monday of this month about the maker movement and how that works together with making. So you want to check that out. But yeah, we're just excited for the new things we're trying out, and the changes at E-Extension and the opportunities that extension professionals can have if they join and get involved. So.
All right, thanks, Paul. I want to thank all of our guests in today's podcast. Lenah Nguyen is with Virginia Cooperative Extension in Fauquier County, Katie Thomas with Virginia Cooperative Extension in Loudoun County, and then Paul Hill, Utah State University Extension, Washington County. Great conversation about the maker movement. I want to thank you for joining us as well for today's podcast. Remember, you can find out more about the Working Differently in Extension podcast by following us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @WDNEXT. That's @WDNEXT. And you can also find more at www.ag.ndsu.edu/working